Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to this lovely session that we have, an important topic that we're going to be discussing, which is being led by our adolescents. So we're talking about tobacco control in Zambia, and this is the adolescents having their say on this particular topic. I'm sure most of us have been hearing and talking about tobacco control, but we need to hear what the adolescents actually have to say. So we're actually live on the MOH page on Facebook. Hope we can spread the word so that people can log in and listen into this discussion. So in the studio, I am Dr. Lunga Ziko from infectious disease at the Adult Infectious Disease Center, University Teaching Hospital. And my co-facilitator is Dr. Chungu Chalilwe, who is from CRS Catholic Relief Services. So we are going to be chairing this particular session, and in our midst we have judges who are going to be judging the speakers for the day. So before we get into the gist of the topic, I will welcome the District Health Director, Dr. Rhodes Kandawire, to give us the welcoming remarks.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, all. I would like to thank the facilitators. Dr.
Mkandawire, could you check your audio?
Can you hear me? Are you able to get me now? Hello?
We are still unable to hear you.
So can you get me now? Let me try. Can you get me now?
Yeah. Excuse me, miss, we can hear you.
You can get me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
You can ask her to rejoin the session with computer audio.
Okay. Dr. Mkandawire, could you rejoin the session using computer audio? Probably that should be able to fix the problem.
Okay, others said they could hear me. Okay, let me rejoin using computer audio.
Okay, as we wait for Dr. Mkandawire, we'll ask Dr. Chungu to take us through the rules and introduce the speakers for the discussion.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Ziko, and welcome to everyone. Thank you for sparing this time to join this very pertinent discussion. So on the behalf of the Zambia Pediatric Association, once more, would like to welcome you. And before we go through the rules, I'd just like to welcome both International School of Lusaka and Rhodes Park School and introduce to you the speakers. So from Rhodes Park School, we have Chisengan Sofu, just wave to the camera. Okay, and then our second speaker from Rhodes Park is Edna Mbewe. Okay, our third speaker is Mapalo Chipuma. Okay, and then over from International School, joining us virtually, we have the first speaker, Divyam. Divyam, kindly wave. Thank you. And then we have Merlin. Merlin, kindly wave so we can see you. Thank you. And then we have Abhinav as well. Kindly wave. Thank you very much. So this is a mock parliamentary session. So what it is that our adolescents are going to present their case for tobacco control in Zambia. This year, the World No Tobacco Day that fell on 31st of May had the theme protecting adolescents from the manipulation of industry. As we know, as we fight for tobacco control, on the other side, there's an adverse factor, which is in the form of the industry also having an alternate discussion. So to help us to be able to educate what will be said by the adolescents, we'll have our able panel of speakers. So we have Mr. Moase Brian from St. Paul's, who's not yet with us. And then we have Mrs. Agnes Ngandu from the District Education Board Secretary. Kindly wave. Thank you. And then we have Mr. Gabriel Lungu from the Tobacco Control Desk at the Ministry of Health. Thank you very much. So the rules of this session are that each speaker is going to have 5 minutes to present their case. You are allowed to use audiovisual materials as you may, and then the speakers will judge you for clarity, content, logic, and time management. We shall alternate speakers between the two schools, and the first school will be ISL, followed by Rhodes Park School. Are there any clarifications before we begin? Okay, so maybe now we can hear from Dr. Mkandawire, the District Health Director. I hope you are able we're able to hear you now, ma'am. Over. To unmute. Dr. Mkandawire, we still can't hear you. Oh, wow. Okay.
Is she using a computer or a mobile phone? Maybe we can try and log out from here.
To dial in, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Mkandawire, we'll try and dial you in.
Hello?
Hello, please mute your mic.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Apologies for that technical glitch. So on behalf of the Provincial Health Director, I would have loved to be with us and listen to the debate. I'd like to welcome everybody, all the participants, to this
sorry, Dr. Mkandawe, could you kindly mute your audio, your laptop?
I've already muted it.
Okay, we're getting some feedback. Okay.
I've muted it.
Okay, please proceed.
Oh, I know that way. So as I was saying, let me put my laptop to sleep. Okay, as I was saying, the PhD Dr. Mali would have loved to be with us, but due to other duties, he's not here. Nevertheless, he sends his greetings, and we are looking forward to what the adolescents will come up with as they debate on tobacco control in Zambia. And it is my hope that from this discussion, we'll get the views of the young people. I would like to thank the facilitators for making this debate possible, especially during this time of COVID. I'm glad that we can still have this debate and get the ideas of our young people. Suffice to say that there is a need for our adolescents to lead such discussions, especially that such matters affect their health. I'm not here to preempt the discussions, the debate that will be undertaken. Just to note that tobacco is one of the major determinants of health for our young people through both active smoking or passive smoking. And we have seen a trend of our young people, others just escorting friends to go and they're smoking something called shisha or whatever, any type of smoking that they're taking. So you find others actively smoking and others passive smokers. So we hope that from this discussion, we get the views of the young people on the effects of tobacco control in Zambia, the pros and cons, and I'll sit in and listen, and at the end of the discussions, I hope I can take back whatever we agree upon to the provincial health director, so that we know what the views of the young people are on this topic, and how we can also then look at health promotion with regards to tobacco control in Zambia. So I'd like to thank all of you for coming and wishing you fruitful discussions. And thank you to the schools that are going to take part. I'm told it's International School and Rhodes Park. And thank you to all the facilitators, the judges, and everybody who has made this possible. Thank you, and good luck in your debate. I end here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mkandawire, for the welcome remarks. At this point, we're actually now going to get into the discussions. And as was mentioned earlier, we are going to have alternating speakers from the different schools. And the first school to start the discussion is International School of Lusaka. The first speaker, followed by the first speaker for Rhodes Park, and we shall proceed in that manner. So International School of Lusaka, the first speaker you have, that is, you have five minutes, and that should be Divian. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can you see my screen? Sir?
Hello?
Right. The theme, good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. The theme of this
we can't get
debate
you.
is-
Could you just check your audio?
Can you hear us? Hello? Hello?
Oh, sir, can you hear us now, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, can you hear us now? Can you see the other side? Looking at me. Okay.
International school, we cannot get you. We cannot get you. So we're just going to change a few things. We'll start with Rhodes Park as we try and sort out your audio from your end. So Rhodes Park, we can have the first speaker.
Disunified, disorganized, and fragmented are the only words that can be used to describe the Zambian government, to describe us. As the government of Zambia, we are fragmented when it comes to governing tobacco and tobacco policies. There are many gross misalignments between the policies of the economic sector and efforts to implement the provisions of the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. This fragmentation exists not only internally, but at different levels, whereby the Department of Industry, Department of Foreign Trade, and the Zambia Development Agency are linked only to the economy with disregard for health. There is therefore an urgent need for us to generate economic policies that align with FCTC commitments. The question, however, is how shall we do this? Allow me to proceed to my first point, which is establishing a forum for dialogue. These departments actively encourage tobacco companies to set up manufacturing facilities in Zambia, explicitly stating that these incentives are put in place to develop the Zambian economy. Again, emphasis is being placed on the economy and not on the health of the public. The forum in itself is not a panacea, but an initial point of contact. Brazil presents an example worth emulating. The president created a forum that brought together 13 different ministries and departments that worked on FCTC implementation. Creating such a forum in our own country is the first step in accelerating control because implementation requires whole of government engagement. And an individual piece of a puzzle has no meaning, but neither do the rest of the pieces without this piece. In a similar way, one department on its own cannot curb tobacco. Dialogue amongst the various departments, like assembling the puzzle, is the only way we can control and finally curb the epidemic. Beginning to actually implement norms embedded in the FCTC is the next step to take. It is our responsibility to reinforce the commitments made to the FCTC. Article 5.3 states, and I quote, "Parties should not grant incentives, privileges, or benefits to the tobacco industry to establish or run the business." Mr. Speaker and honorable members of the House, you agree with me to say that the Department of Industry and the Department of Foreign Trade are in direct violation of that article, as they market and give tobacco-related incentives. Investment is being looked at on the marketing point of view with disregard for the health. Article 5 is not the only one being violated. The core provisions of the FCTC contained in Articles 15 through to 17 are being disregarded as well, especially on the point of sale to and by minors. Many young people today have access to tobacco. It's literally at our fingertips. Violation of Article 13 goes without mention, as it basically requires a comprehensive ban on advertising, promoting, and sponsoring tobacco, as this would reduce its consumption. The priority for the country is to diversify its economic output. However, trade in tobacco products poses a serious threat to public health. Issuance of incentives increases the accessibility and affordability of tobacco products, thus fueling the tobacco epidemic and undermining control policies. These violations do not require large amounts of money to correct. Therefore, the anti-tobacco campaign requires better funding. We need to demonstrate commitment to implementation by mobilizing technical, human, and financial resources to overcome the existing weaknesses. Providing important information on tobacco control is key. It is difficult to identify whether there is true lack of understanding of what the FCTC says in relation to economic policies, or whether the government departments are actually acting contrary intentionally. The FCTC is considered irrelevant to the Department of Industry, Department of Foreign Trade, and the Zambia Development Agency. When asked about the relation of the FCTC to its department, an interviewee stated, "It is our view that the benefits to the economy will outweigh the health costs. Our concern is to promote development." The lack of a body charged with FCTC implementation has resulted in lack of coordination between the Department of Industry, Department of Foreign Trade, and the Zambia Development Agency, with the Ministry of Health and Tobacco Control. Therefore, there is need to establish such a body. There needs to be great effort to strengthen the system of implementation. There is lack of unity and coordination amongst us, and that needs to change. I rest my case.
Okay, thank you very much. And relatively good timing, good timekeeping. We shall move to the International School of Lusaka. I hope we can now get them. The first speaker, International School, are you ready? Can you just test your audio so that we can hear you?
Can you hear us, Mr. Speaker?
Unfortunately, we can't hear you.
Sorry?
Can you hear us, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker.
International School of Lusaka, just connect with your audio again.
Mr. Speaker, can you hear us?
And please switch on your camera so we can see you. So we heard from Speaker 1 on the emphasis on FCTC, the framework for Framework Convention for Tobacco Control. ISL, are you on now?
Yes, sir. Can you hear us, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, can you hear us?
I think I missed one time.
Yes, Divyam?
Yeah, yes, sir. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can get you now.
Okay. Okay. Can you see our screen?
Yes, we can see your
please
screen.
switch on your camera.
Okay. Yes. Yes, sir. Can you see me? I'm waving. So may I start?
Yes, you can start.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, good morning, Mr. Speaker. Today's theme is protecting the youth from manipulation from the tobacco industry. Today's motion is tobacco control in Zambia, adolescents have their say. So tobacco control is defined as the regulation of tobacco consumption and sale, and an adolescent is defined as a person aged between 13 and 20. Sir, the estimated number of tobacco-related deaths per year in Zambia has risen from 3,000 to 8,000 from 1990 to 2015. This alarming fact suggests that we must accelerate tobacco control in Zambia. However, we must first understand the tobacco situation in Zambia, which is why I would like to take a few moments to recap the history of tobacco control in Zambia. For a long time, Zambian civil society organizations have been fighting for improved tobacco control. And in 1992, the Zambian government passed several bills which prohibited selling tobacco to those under 16, tobacco giveaways, and advertising tobacco in the media. Then on 23rd May 2008, the Zambian government signed the World Health Organization's Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, the FCTC, which requires Zambia to regularly implement and update strategies to reduce tobacco use in the nation. Article 8 of the FCTC discusses protecting people from exposure to tobacco smoke, and in response to this, the Zambian government passed statutory instrument number 39, which prohibits smoking in all public places and creates a 100% smoke-free environment. So the Zambian government wants to accelerate tobacco control. Unfortunately, it has not been successful in doing so, as the public has cooperated poorly with the government. A shadow report was conducted to assess how well the government has been able to implement the FCTC, and it did so by studying 3 Zambian cities, Kabwe, Kitwe, and Lusaka. The shadow reporters recorded several violations of Article 8 and Statutory Instrument number 39. Multiple bars did not display a no smoking sign, which is required by law, and the patrons of those bars were smoking freely. When asked why, they were hostile. Furthermore, Article 13 of the FCTC discusses restricting tobacco advertisement, promotion, and sponsorship. The shadow reporters found several violations of Article 13, even though the Zambian government banned commercial advertisement of tobacco products in 1992. In all 3 cities, all the major bus stops, retail stores, hair salons, etc., had several posters for tobacco products. The most common form of advertisement, though, was when the tobacco industry distributed umbrellas that had their logos. Therefore, the Zambian government has failed to enforce its laws properly. Nevertheless, the tobacco industry will oppose stricter enforcement of these laws. The tobacco industry is quite influential in Zambia, economically and politically, because tobacco is an important source of export revenue for the nation. It also supports over 20,000 small-scale farmers. The Zambian Development Authority, ZDA, has even helped the tobacco companies such as British American Tobacco Zambia, BATZ, by creating multi-facility economic zones, MFEZ, which have the priority of boosting Zambia's export revenue. Just like the previous speaker from Rhodes Park said, an MFEZ informant was even quoted saying, "We market on the marketing point of view, not on the health point of view. If we say we look at the health point of view, then we would be negative for us, and we have to show the positive side." Sir, this is shameful, Mr. Speaker. Besides that, the tobacco industry aggressively defends its products. From McGill University, Rafael Lenkutra wrote an article in which he interviewed many high-profile individuals from the tobacco industry. Shockingly, Mr. Speaker, most of them were not even aware of the FCTC. Regardless, a tobacco industry informant defended the industry by saying that the tobacco produced in Zambia is not for local consumption and that there's a decrease in smoking rates in Zambia. However, WHO data contradicts this. There has been a 2% increase in male smokers and a 5% increase in female smokers from 2011 to 2012. Moreover, it doesn't matter if the tobacco isn't consumed locally. As citizens of Zambia, we do have the responsibility to take care of our people, but that doesn't mean we should harm others. The FCTC wants to reduce tobacco consumption worldwide, so we must take that into account. On another note, Mr. Speaker, the Zambian government has had many problems while pushing for improved tobacco control. Lenkutra concluded that different government departments have different interests and there's no multi-sectoral body to address tobacco control. Furthermore, a senior policy worker at the Ministry of Health even said that there's a challenge of funding with tobacco control and mentioned that tobacco was not on their agenda and that they had different budget lines. In conclusion, to accelerate tobacco control, 4 things must be done. The government must approve of stricter enforcement, reduce the influence of tobacco companies, create an overseeing committee, and address the misalignment of policies between different departments. I yield my time.
Well, thank you so much. Lovely points there. As we go to the next set of presenters, when you exceed 4 minutes 30 seconds, I'll just give you a warning so that you just wind up and ensure that we finish within 5 minutes for each of the remaining panelists. Rhodes, we can have the second speaker.
Honorable members of the House, good afternoon. My name is Edna Bewe and I am from Rhodes School. Today I will be speaking on what measures should be taken in order to accelerate tobacco control in our country, Zambia. Before I set about to speak on the measures that should be undertaken, I'd like to state that the underlying issue is not that we, the government, are not willing to control the tobacco within the country, but rather the issue lies with the fact that we are not taking action and the FCTC treaty, of which Zambia is a part of, is not being implemented. And so my purpose here, Mr. Speaker, is to simply call for action within the government. The challenges of implementation are not unique to Zambia, and the main reason for this is in relation to the country's economy. Zambia's economy relies heavily on mineral exports, notably copper. However, since 2002, Zambia has focused on diversifying its economy by supporting the agricultural and service sector. As a result, tobacco has become a great interest of the country and has played a part in contributing to its economy by creating employment and empowering households through improved income. For Zambia, the pursuit of investment has become central to the political economy of the country's future development. It was even further noted by the former president, Michael Sata, that the main aim of government is to continue with policy and institutional reforms with the key objective of making the country more attractive to domestic and private investment. To sum it all up, the country's weak economy and strong tobacco interests make it difficult to achieve the goal of implementing the FCTC. Honorable members, even if now we as the government see benefits of producing tobacco, it still does not remove the fact that there are great consequences. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind all members of government that all that glitters is not gold. According to the World Health Organization, more than 8 million people each year around the world are killed by tobacco. 8 million. And out of those 8 million people, honorable members of the House, are 8,000 Zambians that also die as a result of tobacco intake. The growing of illicit trade in tobacco products poses as a serious threat to public health, as what Chisenga Sofu here had said. Illicit trade through the issuance of incentives increases the accessibility and affordability of tobacco products. Here in Zambia, a cigarette is just 2 kwacha, which thus fuels the tobacco epidemic and undermines the control policies. And it has been further stated that as the population continues to grow, so will the number of smokers. Consequently, this will be a burden on Zambia's small economy as health costs and lost productivity of those that are sickened or have died due to the tobacco smoking will increase. There are arguments used by key informants in favor of bolstering tobacco manufacturing through government investment incentives, which suggests that the economic sector is largely influenced by the standard arguments perpetuated by the tobacco industry over the years. However, look at Ireland. The country has been smoke-free for 2 years. Before implementation of the FCTC, tobacco industries had argued vehemently for that smoking was an integral part of the country's pop culture and that would cause economic harm. However, that was not the case. In the 2 years of being smoke-free, there has been no negative impact on businesses. This, honorable members, brings me to the point that we, the government, should be brave enough to proceed the implement of the FCTC treaty without being misguided by the tobacco industries.
30 seconds to go.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to emphasize that it does not take one to smoke for them to be affected. Out of the 8 million people I had talked about earlier, 1.2 people get affected because of secondhand smoking, or in other words, passive smoking. Statistics have proved by the World Health Organization Internal Agency for Research on Cancer have indeed accepted that secondhand smoke exposure increases the risk of coronary heart disease by 25 to 30%, and for lung cancer by 20 to 30% in non-smokers. Honorable members of the House, we're not talking about just a supposed bad habit, but a silent killer. I rest my case.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was Edna Mbewe. We shall now have the international school with Merlin.
Hello. One sec. Okay. May I begin?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay. The WHO have stated that tobacco industries have begun to target younger generations, and they do this with the introduction of appealing flavors such as bubblegum and gummy bears to tobacco products, as well as the promotion and sponsorship of tobacco products, like my fellow speaker earlier stated, through items like umbrellas. They further do this with the distribution of free samples at popular events, as well as advertisement and product placement of tobacco products in movies and TV shows and on social media. The increase in consumption of tobacco products among adolescents is due to lax tobacco policies, pro-advertisements, and lower health awareness. The CDC states that there's an increase in tobacco consumption among lower class adolescents, and this is due to their lack of education, as well as advertisements being purposely placed in lower class neighborhoods. The WHO says that 82% of smokers worldwide live in less economically developed countries, as well as transitional economies. Therefore, we can conclude that the poor are affected the most, economically because they would have to spend a larger percent of their income on tobacco products, as well as health-wise due to their reduced availability of adequate and affordable healthcare. And this is a necessity due to certain disease dangers such as cancer, throat cancer, lung cancer, pulmonary heart disease. Moreover, the highest prevalence of tobacco users in developing countries came from the illiterate, almost 64%, and there was a decrease in this prevalence as the level of education increased. Therefore, it can be concluded that the two most vulnerable groups are adolescents, as well as adolescents part of lower classes, and therefore policies must be reinforced and implemented to protect our most vulnerable. As my speaker stated earlier, Zambia does have bills to control and regulate tobacco consumption and sale, but these are not being implemented properly and are consistently being violated. It is therefore extremely important to restate and indicate the importance of our policies. The Empower document suggests various solutions. However, the following were identified to be applicable to Zambia as a nation. Number one, stricter advertisement policies. As my fellow speaker stated earlier, there are policies in place that regulate the image of tobacco. However, the 3 cities in question did not follow these restrictions. Looking at how our younger generation is easily influenced by advertisement, there must be strict policies put in place to regulate the image of tobacco. Tobacco companies and products should not be used as a means of advertisements for hotels, restaurants, bars, bus stops, and also should not be allowed to advertise on large billboards. Looking at this image on the screen that was taken from a popular grocery store in Lusaka, we can see how tobacco products are being marketed as positively. As the board states, introducing the enhanced firmness of flow filter technology. This is put into place in order to attract new consumers and to ensure all consumers stay. Also notice how the packaging does not contain any pictorial warnings, which is seen to have a larger impact on consumers. Therefore, policies must be put into place to reduce the positive marketing of tobacco products, as well as making mandatory pictorial warnings. An example of this is now shown on the screen. 2, an increase in taxes. An increase in tax would reduce the affordability and availability of tobacco products to adolescents, as they do not earn their own income, and therefore reduce the prevalence of tobacco consumption in adolescents. It also creates a form of income for the government, which can be funneled into prevention campaigns and rehabilitation for addiction. While the effectiveness of such policies can be questioned, we have seen other countries being able to successfully implement such policies. A country that was able to successfully implement policies was Uganda, and Uganda does have a similar GDP to Zambia, and therefore we can compare the two countries. Uganda joined the FCTC in 2007 and was able to successfully implement the following policies. 1, creating smoke-free public places, such as workplaces, public transport, and areas that provide children's services. 2, creating a ban on all tobacco sponsorship, advertisement, promotion.
30 seconds to go.
3, making pictorial warnings mandatory on all tobacco products. 4, ensuring that products contain the contents and emissions of the product. 5, prohibiting sales in certain areas, as well as areas close to schools, stadiums, and the sale of single tobacco and water pipe tobacco, as well as the banning of sale of tobacco products to people younger than 21 years of age. Because we have seen other countries in Africa being able to successfully implement such policies, Zambia should be able to take the step forward in making our country safer for our citizens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Merlin, for your delivery. Before we move to Mapalo from Rhodes Park, we'd just like to recognize that the Speaker of this House, Dr. Convelani Mateo, is in and he's listening to all your educations and will be able to deliver for us what the final position of the Speakers of the House will be. So we now move to Mapalo Chipuma from Rhodes Park, who is the third speaker, to give us points.
I can start?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, honorable members of Parliament. My name is Mapalo Chipoma and I'm from Rhodes Park School. Cigarettes are killing our people. Nearly 8,000 deaths per year occur in Zambia due to tobacco-related illnesses. I once knew a guy who would smoke a packet of cigarettes each day in secret when his family were asleep. He passed away a couple of years back and his family couldn't believe that he smoked because they've never seen him, of course, but the proof was there. His lungs were destroyed, and so was his family. Mr. Speaker, as you can see, this beaker was once clear, as the same thing as those who never started smoking. Their lungs were pure, their lungs were clean. But as they started smoking, eventually it became dark, and the proof is there in all the scientific research that has occurred. It is said that people who smoke have made their choice, but they are victims of the tobacco epidemic due to their addiction to the nicotine each cigarette contains. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. This has been said by Maya Angelou, and I quote, "This is exactly like a cigarette. People will forget what the warning label will say, forget what is done to those it has killed, but never forget how it will make them feel." The tobacco epidemic is preventable. The death rate of tobacco-related illnesses can be reduced. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, had we as a governing body done our part to accelerate tobacco control in our country, deaths like that could be reduced or prevented all in all. Tobacco cultivation in Zambia started in 1911. Since then, trading tobacco has grown immensely. Tobacco production is said to be an important contributor to Zambia's economy in terms of labor and revenue generation. The tobacco industry has influenced us to believe that without the income it brings through exportation, the economy will tank greatly. What would an economy be worth without people? Does money trump health now? Honorable members and Mr. Speaker, it does not take a cigarette in your mouth for tobacco to affect you. Secondhand smoke can affect one's health and increase health risks almost as much as it does to a person smoking, such as frequent and severe asthma attacks, respiratory infections, and ear infections. Research clearly shows that there is no safe level of exposure to secondhand smoke. In light of Zambia's obligation under the World Health Organization Framework Convention of Tobacco Control, FCTC, it's been examined that the institutional actors in Zambia's tobacco sector are to better understand their roles and determine the institutional context that supports tobacco production in Zambia. Although we have obligations under the FCTC to take steps to reduce tobacco production, the country's weak economy and strong tobacco interests make it difficult to achieve this goal. Respondents uniformly acknowledge that growing the country's economy and ensuring employment for its citizens are the government's top priorities. Lackluster coordination and collaboration between the institutional actors, both within and outside government, contributes to an environment that helps sustain tobacco production in the country. A tobacco products control bill has been under review for a number of years, but with no supply measures included and no indication of when or whether it will be passed. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. Mark Twain. Honorable members, drawing from one of my previous points, there is inconsistency between Zambia's economic policy to strengthen the country's economy and its FCTC commitment to regulate and control tobacco production. The absence of a whole of government approach towards tobacco control has created an institutional context of dueling objectives, with some government ministries working at ultimate authority. This industry risks being run according to the desire and demands of multinational tobacco companies, with few, if any, checks against them. It is critical that we, as the different parts of the government, work hand in hand to ensure the better living of the citizens in this country. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, it is acknowledged that a new law has been placed for the arrest and prosecution of anyone found violating the recent ban on smoking in public places, as well as outlawing the advertisement of tobacco products that do not bear a disclaimer reading, smoking is harmful. But this will not be enough if we are going to correct the damage tobacco has caused. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Dr. Seuss. This, honorable members, is why we must accelerate the tobacco control in Zambia. I rest my case.
Thank you very much, Mapalo. We shall have the last speaker, that's Abindu from International School of Lusaka. The next 5 minutes are yours.
International School, could you kindly show us your video?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Honorable Speaker, our country, Zambia, is at a crossroads. On the one hand, it is imperative that we protect our citizens, but on the contrary, tobacco production employs around 20,000 farmers and many more who refine it. It is also our country's one of our biggest exports, constituting for about 4% of our entire export revenue, bringing in $70 million yearly. But it also costs our economy almost 4 times as much as it brings in, 2.8 billion kwacha. Yes, 165 million of which are spent on healthcare, and the rest, 2.7 billion kwacha, are lost in productivity due to premature mortality or workplace smoking. It is imperative that we not only look at the financial side of it, but also the social and physical. Tobacco is going to prove detrimental to our economy in the long run. Therefore, here are a few solutions that should help us curb such practices. The first one is to set up a radius, a containment zone with a radius of 100 meters around educational institutions wherein no shops are allowed to sell tobacco or any tobacco-related products. This will reduce the availability of cigarettes to adolescents who are most likely to fall prey to it. The sale of singles or single cigarettes should also be prohibited because they're more economical and cheaper to certain audiences, and they're more likely to buy it.
Given the recent surge in internet usage in our country, around 2.4 million Zambian citizens are now on Facebook, around 13% of our entire population. The largest user group was between 18 to 24 years of age. Therefore, it is quite obvious that the younger generation is more likely to be influenced by social media. In order to capitalize on this, a social media campaign depicting the flaws of tobacco would be immensely beneficial. If someone influential was to be the face of the campaign, even more people will pour in for the support of the campaign. Another grave implication of smoking in public is secondhand smoke. It not only causes a 30% increase in the chances of a bystander catching lung infection, it can affect pregnant ladies who are not at fault. Therefore, it would be very efficient for us to set up designated smoking areas as brought up in the draft bill of 2018, wherein people who are dead set on smoking can go and smoke and not affect other people. This will not only protect others from secondhand smoke, but it will also not infringe the rights of people who are dead set on smoking. In addition to all the policies brought forth, another would be to add an aspect of education against tobacco in our local curriculum. As stated by my speaker before, people who are of a low social economic gentry and are not as literate as others are most likely to smoke. Therefore, adding an aspect in our local curriculum regarding the laws of tobacco will help us greatly. So in conclusion, in order to protect the youth, we must realize the inefficacy of the government as well as the proper implementation of policies. Using resources like the Empower document as well as ideas from our adolescents, we can move forward in our fight against the tobacco epidemic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abhinav, for bringing those points forward. And at this point, as our speakers have the immense task of educating to decide on which school delivered the best argument, considering that both arguments were so strong, all 6 speakers were very eloquent. That is a position that I dare not find myself in this afternoon. So at this point, I can't see the Deputy Director from the Adolescent Health Unit on. Dr. Kakungu, are you on? Okay. I can't see Dr. Kakungu on, but Dr. Siumbwa.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, Dr. Siumbwa, kindly give us some remarks just to, render support to our adolescents who, have you heard, have a very strong case and a very big challenge for us, but at the same time, just to also give your words of wisdom on this subject.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chungu, and good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Ministry of Health, I'd really like to thank you most sincerely for the commitment that you've shown just by showing up for this very, very important debate on a very topical issue. Fighting the tobacco industry isn't easy.
Dr. Siumbwa.
I'm sure you've read one. The quality. Hello.
Yes, kindly proceed. We can get you now.
Oh, I don't know what happened. It should be network. So I was saying, okay, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, so I'm from the non-communicable unit at Ministry of Health, and tobacco control is one of the areas that we work in. And I must say, I have learned a lot from the few minutes that I've been listening to both sides debating the issue. Tobacco control is not easy. It's not easy in any country. It's a very complex issue. And if you as the youth, as our adolescents, as our future leaders can get a grip of it now and become ambassadors of tobacco control, then there just might be a difference in the way the tobacco industry is handling its issues and how we are going to eventually, hopefully, take control of tobacco issues in our country. So on behalf of the ministry, I'd like to thank you most sincerely for your time and your commitment, and to the school administration, to your parents who've allowed you to participate in this debate. And we are hoping this is not the end of you participating in this very, very, very important cause. And we are hoping that you continue being ambassadors for tobacco control in Zambia. So thank you very much. And we hope we'll still be hearing from you. I know the district director is also on this chat. I know there are programs that the Ministry of Education issues of tobacco control in schools. So we hope you're going to continue participating in those programs and eventually be part of his making of history in Zambia where tobacco control is concerned. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siumbwa. And also we must add that this activity is a mirror activity that happened in Eastern Province. We had St. Monica's and Chizongwe boys have a similar discussion. So we look forward to the follow-on discussions that will happen between the one school from here and the school from Eastern Province. Also to state that the participating schools have demonstrated considerable leadership and have pledged to declare their schools as tobacco-free schools. So this is an initiative that hopefully will set a wave of change, not only in the schools, but across the country, because adolescents are a very unique population, and indeed we cannot have a discussion on their behalf. So they have taken this up and have decided to lead in this discussion. At this point, just a few announcements that as a follow-on to this discussion, there is a competition that is going to be launched, and this competition is open to every school and every adolescent across the country. What this competition is asking for is to send a logo that you believe depicts tobacco control in Zambia. So you design a logo and a short 10-second video stressing why you believe that tobacco control is important. And so the email to send this to is tobaccologo@gmail.com, tobaccologo@gmail.com. And the results will be announced on a public forum of which adolescent from representing which school was able to send in a logo that will be one of the symbols depicting what tobacco control looks like from the adolescents being the custodians of this issue. Judges, I don't know how far we are. Okay, like I said, they have a mammoth task, so we'll just give them a few minutes. And let me just repeat that there's a national competition going on for adolescents, open to schools as well, to design an anti-tobacco logo and to send a 10-second video depicting what tobacco control looks like from your perspective. And the email to send this to is tobaccologo@gmail.com. And at this point, just to say thank you to everyone behind the scenes, from the Zambia Pediatric Association, from the Ministry of Health, from the participants themselves, Rhodes Park schools, from the leadership at those schools, and from International School of Lusaka for just picking up the mantle and delivering this. We are supposed to have remarks right now from the District Education Board Secretary, but we know that they are actively involved in deciding who the winning speaker is. So Dr. Ziko, what did you think of the discussion today?
Dr. Chungu, this was very enlightening to me. You know, I see patients, mostly infectious disease patients, and smoking is a risk factor for a number of infections. And we heard a number of points from the speakers talking about smoking as a risk factor. But one thing that was also striking was the wealth of knowledge that was brought up, especially from legislation, history, and just so much was brought out in the discussion. And I think all the speakers need a round of applause.
Yeah, well done to you guys. There's some comments in the chat box, so maybe you can go through them. Go down.
There's a message from Nadira to everyone stating that we have a survey that that we can use to link just talk about tobacco, stopping tobacco use. So we can just look at that in the chat box. Otherwise, everything else was.
Okay, so a lot of positive feedback from the chat box, a lot of private messages, just encouraging the participants, the speakers. And so we also want to extend profuse thanks to the Ministry of Education. As one of the speakers did say, that the tobacco fight is really a multi-sectoral discussion, and it's not the preserve of the Ministry of Health, but a collaborative effort from several stakeholders: the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, and parents, to Chisenga, Edna, Mapalo, Merlin, Divian, and Abhinav. You really are the champions of the day-to-day, and you have an enormous task. And I think you've led the discussion. Let's use our networks to continue fueling the tobacco discussion. There was a lot of historical perspective, as you said. Yes. Just even like, I think, like you said, from the medical perspective, we tend to look at it from the narrow perspective of smoking and lung cancer. But when you look at the economic impact, like when the reference was made to the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, on just how that so much of the, like how Uganda and Zambia are similar in terms of GDP, and yet Uganda has enforced tobacco control, and it hasn't actually negatively impacted them in the way that they thought it would. Yeah. So that just, for me, that's a wealth of information that I think is very important.
And also that tobacco may bring in money into the country, but we also tend to lose through tobacco use in the health system.
Exactly.
By providing health care to the patients that arise from the use of tobacco.
Yeah, and how such a huge part of our budget goes towards health in the form of curative health services. And so that was a very good discussion. How are we doing?
As they are winding up, there is also a message from Martin Zulu who says, "Good points, guys." He's participating from Kafue, Georgia, and he's the focal point person for adolescent health. And he's saying, through our efforts as adolescents, also including myself as an adolescent, through our efforts as adolescents, we can have a tobacco-free Zambia. So keep it up.
As you're saying, I'm looking back at my adolescent days, and I'm just thinking I wasn't half as confident as these guys here. Very well articulately spoken.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, sir. I'm sure you guys are very anxious, isn't it? Yeah.
We're also anxious.
So just to add that the World Health Organization has a toolkit to support schools to be able to drive the agenda towards passing tobacco control fully in most countries. And one of the suggestions is to form anti-tobacco clubs in schools. Nowadays, you know, there are just so many industry responses to some of the points that you've made through. I think there was a picture of just how, you know, it's being branded. In stores, you have tobacco products that are being put in different flavors and colors, and that's very attractive to the youth. And so we also need to have a counter response. So a challenge is, if you can, you know, moving on from here, look at setting up, you know, anti-tobacco clubs, find other innovative ways that really we can adapt to some of the manipulations that are going forth, and just how that we can contribute to this discussion and be more resilient towards the counter response of the adolescents. So interestingly, adolescents are a target market for smoking, because when you engage someone at a very young age, then they are hooked for the rest of their life. So meaning that you then have a guaranteed market, you know, for someone's lifetime. And like if you engage someone, you know, much older in their life, I'm sure you wouldn't start smoking.
I wouldn't.
At this point. So the target is really adolescents and youth because of that factor. So really, that's why you guys lending your voice to this discussion is very, very critical.
You can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Exactly, exactly. So I can hear a lot of murmuring amongst the judges. I'm sure there's a deadlock. Yeah. So to people on the call, kindly just be patient as the judges are giving us their final results. Dr. Kapoma, we can see you on. What did you make of the discussion without preempting anything?
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, I thought it was a very interesting discussion. I tuned in a bit late, but from what I was able to catch, I really enjoyed it. I found it interesting to see how involved young people are in such important issues as tobacco and smoking. I think this should be encouraged, and I look forward to seeing how the judges will judge the affair.
No pressure to the judges. Yeah. So Dr. Apoma is from Livingstone. The DHT, Dr. Mkandawere, how did you like the discussion? Oh, are you able? Yes.
I don't know whether you hear me.
Yes, now we can.
Okay, yeah, the discussion was very educative, and I was very impressed with the research that went into what our young people have presented. And as was mentioned by Dr. Siumbwa, I think these can be now our champions in the tobacco control. The DEBS is, I think we will work together with the DEBS so that as we do our health education, health promotion, we incorporate the tobacco control issues, especially now that we know that they are champions in the schools. So I'd like to congratulate both schools actually. I know the judges, we are not putting pressure on the judges, but both schools do so well. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And another point, Dr. Zico, is just in the era of COVID, you know, because so tobacco smoking can fuel the spread of COVID, you know, from shared pipes. I saw a shisha picture there, but also in the era of COVID, to be able to adapt and still use platforms such as virtual media to still have very critical discussions is just commendable, because the temptation to postpone such critical discussions is very immense, but you know, just the innovations and you know, the idea actually to use virtual platform came from the two schools themselves, to say that, you know, why don't we explore continuing this discussion in an innovative manner. So that also just shows how, I think in this era that we are very virtually inclined, we have a lot to learn from the millennials in terms of technology and just how we can adapt.
And again, in the era of COVID, smoking also increases the severity. It increases the severity of COVID in case one has disease. So it's important that we keep on talking about this, not only COVID, but many other infectious diseases.
Okay, so I'll make way for the speaker to come and just give us his remarks and to deliver the results. So Dr. Mateo.
Thank you. So thank you very much, everyone. I'm Dr. Kondwelani Mateo. I'm a lung physician here at the UTH. And I have an invariable task of delivering the results. I must say that I took no part in the judgment, and I couldn't have taken part because Rhodes is my alma mater. I went to primary school at Rhodes. So yeah, so I so I had no hand in the results. All I'll do is deliver. I can see everyone looks tense, but please relax. So these have been totaled up, and the judges had a hard and tough time in coming up with which they deemed was a better school. I must say that both teams are champions, and we're all very proud of you. I will not belabor the points laid out by other speakers. You did all very brilliantly, and I think you are champions for tobacco. You ought to be proud of yourselves. There are no winners per se, in my view, because you've all done very well, and keep on doing the great work you're doing. I see the effects of tobacco by virtue of my work on the end side of patients coming in with lung diseases. And it breaks my heart to see that. And it breaks my heart further to see the volume of patients coming in with lung diseases due to tobacco. The ages becoming younger and younger over the years. But with groups like you, the guys at ISL and you from Rhodes, I'm heartened and I'm encouraged that the trend will reverse in the near future. So great work done. So to ease the tension, I see Divya and they're looking very anxious. So the scores were as follows. So Rhodes had a total score of 289, which was about 80.2% of the maximum possible. So we can give them a hand. And International School had a total score of 315, which was a percentage of 87.5 of the total. So the winners, as determined by the judges, were International School. We can give them a round of applause. Yeah, great work done by both teams. And two pupils were judged to be the best of the six, and these were Divya and Mapalo. So great work all, and my easy task ends here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mateo. We can have the Debs to give some remarks as well.
Thank you very much. As the Minister of General Education and the Lusaka Debs, I'm coming from the background of guidance and counseling. And we know that as a district, we have been fighting. This is our challenge in tobacco. And we have seen most of our learners, they are in it. And today, we are very impressed to see how knowledgeable our learners are, because they're able to understand how this tobacco is very harmful to their health. And apart from that, they have brought so many things. I've learned a lot, and I congratulate the two schools for what you have done. So as the district, we are aiming that all the learners should understand what you have put in place today. We would like you to be champions, and would like to train more to be peer educators so that they can understand how to fight the enemy of tobacco in our schools and to reduce on drug abuse. I'm sure in Lusaka, that's what we are fighting. So looking at what has been happening on behalf of the ministry, we can work together with the Ministry of Health for us to combat this kind of an activity which is bringing harm to our learners. So with these few words, I would like to thank you, the Minister of Health, and also the Ministry of General Education, who has really played together to bring this session into being today. So thank you very much with these few words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Ngandu, for those very great words, and thank you to the House Speaker for the mammoth task that you had before us. Sorry, we've gone overboard. As you can see, the discussion really was a worthwhile, and we appreciate the time from everyone. So in my own capacity, I would just like to say thank you once again to everybody who has tirelessly been working behind the scenes, the Tobacco Control Desk, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Health Promotion, Zambia Pediatric Association. Special mention to certain key champions, Ms. Nadira, Mr. Njovu, who've just really gone out of their way to ensure that we had this meeting in a very safe manner, and one that still went ahead. Congratulations to Rhodes Park. Congratulations to ISL. And really, as everyone has said, you are our champions. And also, thank you, Dr. Zico, for co-facilitating this session. It's been a time well spent. And I'll hand over to you for final comments as we close the meeting.
Okay. Thank you so much once again to everyone who has joined us this afternoon, and has been mentioned earlier over and over. Rhodes Park and International School, you are our champions, and there is no loser in this, because we're all going to win in the fight against tobacco. So even as we end this, I'll echo the words of the DEBS secretary, who mentioned that we need to make a number of you as peer educators, so that you can also help spread the word amongst your peers and also amongst the adults. People who are beyond adolescents, like me and Dr. Chungu. You can spread the word even in your homes, so that together we can win this fight. And with those words, I would love to sign off and wish you all the best as we continue.
Thank you.